This is Katie Wolf-Whaley. I work at the University of Kentucky's Human Development Institute and currently chair Kentucky's Employment First Council. And I'm here today to talk with you about Employment First, what it means for Kentuckians with disabilities and those who support them. Let's first think about the power of this question. As adults in our society, we typically meet new people by asking, "What's your name?" And then, "What do you do?" It's just what we ask. It's how we get to know people, how we form thoughts around identity and future conversations. It's a really powerful question. And yet, in a lot of ways, still today, we hear these kinds of comments as well around employment in people with disabilities. That there are specific places, stereotypical places that hire those people, right? The question of what kind of jobs can people do? Could they really work? That there are other places where people go to spend their days. And fears around, I can't work or I'll lose my benefits. There's misunderstandings or not having enough information to realize what is really possible. And those kind of things matter because it makes it easy for us to wonder if our children with disabilities will be able to work when they grow up, or to wonder and hope that they could get a better job and that they can work and have the kind of access to resources that they need, and wonder about how that could get managed. And the statistics are difficult right now. They're better than they used to be. But in 2024, Kentucky's Youth 1 Year Out survey of youth who had finished high school a year prior, almost 30% of students with IEPs were not pursuing higher education or employment. And 63% of students with the most significant disabilities were not pursuing higher education or employment. When we look at Kentucky's intellectual developmental disability system in a survey of adults receiving services through this statewide system, only 11% of people reported having a job. But 44% of those unemployed stated that they would like to be employed. They would like a job in the community. But only 16% of those who said they wanted a job yet have it written down in their service plan. In our mental health system, we learn that 66% of adults with serious mental illness say they want to work, while just under 20% of adults with serious mental illness are currently employed. So we have a long way to go when it comes to employment. But progress has been being made, and we continue along that path of progress. So back in 2014, Congress passed the Work Innovation Opportunities Act reauthorization that included a lot of components around disability and employment. And one of them was a focus on youth and transition services, as we call them. That Congress makes clear that youth with significant disabilities must be given every opportunity to receive services necessary to ensure the maximum potential to achieve competitive integrated employment. And it created the requirement of additional partnerships within our systems in order to do that, raising those expectations upon students to lead to better outcomes. We've seen employment first take hold in our state and across our country. And what began as a philosophy has turned into a policy direction in law. We know that people with disabilities can be successful on the job, that they can be valued employees. And so while our beliefs about our loved ones have shifted, so too must the systems that support them. In 2022, Kentucky passed employment first legislation, which listed this specific language that the General Assembly finds and declares that it is the policy of the Commonwealth of Kentucky that competitive integrated employment in the community shall be considered the first and primary option for persons with disabilities of working age who desire to become employed. So we have federal law and state law, but the thing is, laws don't work together. People do. Yes, systems need to change and support employment is the primary option, but you as family members need to know that employment should be the option if your loved one so desires. People, we all have to raise these expectations and ask for what people need so that they receive it. This is what we meant by competitive integrated employment. We, the law, there was a definition that was created to state what employment looks like, typical jobs, right, where people are paid no less than the minimum wage, and the common wage of coworkers without disabilities who do similar work, eligible for benefits and promotions as employees without disabilities who do similar work, an opportunity for interaction with folks without disabilities to the same extent as other employees who do not have a disability, right? That those things are comparable for people with and without disabilities who do similar work, to set that expectation of what we mean by work when we're using public money to help somebody find a job. So our expectations have shifted, and policy has shifted. We know Kentucky has a large employment gap between those with and without disabilities. We also know that Kentucky has a labor shortage. Businesses need employees. Employment First isn't just a disability system or a family issue or a disability issue. It's a workforce issue. There are people who are unemployed that we know want to go to work, and there are businesses who need employees who have openings. We've also seen in our state in recent years that businesses are paying attention to what people with disabilities have to offer. So you see more of these kind of examples of events specifically providing information to employers about how to identify, hire, support disabled employees to bring that talent into their companies in ways that make sense and add value to everybody. And these statistics show that when people with disabilities are employed, good things happen within companies. Of course, we also know that good things happen to people when they go to work. So it brings us to this idea around employment first, that employment be that first and primary option for people, everybody who wants to be employed, and that the question is not whether a person can work, but where. We presume competence. We know that all people with disabilities, all people have something to offer that is worthy of pay. And then we figure out what that looks like for that particular person. Now, we also know that employment doesn't just happen for anybody, for any of our children, for any of our family members. It takes a lot of preparation and thinking and planning and figuring out what a good job for me, for my family member, for my loved one could be, regardless of impact of disability. Now, when we do have children with disabilities, there are some different things that we're thinking about, that we're experiencing, what services and education looks like, and there's a lot. And so there are a couple of tools that I wanted to highlight that can be helpful for us as family members to think about with young people with disabilities, and thinking about what their future is going to look like, as we do as parents and loved ones of all of our kids. What are we going to be when I grow up? What's life going to look like as they become adults? And so one resource you can find at the website on this screen is an employment checklist. And I know checklist can sound like a terrible word, but it's just a way to think about things that kids can do that are developmentally appropriate, where we're identifying those skills. We're helping them develop skills in ways that make sense for kids at different ages in thinking about employment as an outcome as they grow, as we do for all of our kids. And so this could be a helpful tool to look over. This is also a helpful tool that you can find at the website at the top of this part of the screen. These are just different ways to think about planning and what people need and what it could look like and what it'll take for your loved one to be successful at work. In fact, they include a toolkit for lots of different areas of life. But these are free tools that you can download from this website and just help you think about, give you some structure if that's helpful for you about what this could look like for your loved one and what it'll take. Because as our children go from school into adulthood, there's a lot to consider. This idea of transitioning from school into adult life, as we call it. As family members, there's so much to navigate and help our loved one figure out, as we do with all of our kids who are going from high school into that next stage of life. But it can help to get connected, to get to know people who can help explain these kinds of things to you and answer the questions that you have. There are lots of reasons to have questions, and these are all terms and concepts and things that would be helpful to understand as you look toward adult life and moving toward employment. So finding the resources that can answer those questions is really helpful. Even knowing the right terms to look up so that you know what to ask about can be helpful in preparing you. Part of that 2014 reauthorization of the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, often referred to as WIOA, was the creation of pre-employment transition services, often called Pre-ETS. These are the 5 services that should be available to all students with a disability who are presumed eligible for VR services. That means you don't have to officially apply at your local vocational rehabilitation office. Because of an impact of disability, they are likely to be presumed eligible for those services at this point, and you should be able to ask your local school about these. Take advantage of these kind of things when your family members are still in school and they are there for you. Now, how does one receive pre-employment transition services? It does depend upon what part of the state you're in, what school district you are in, what school you are in, what community, what region, and what is around you that offers these types of services. And so these are some examples of ways that these are provided. It might happen during the school day based at the school. It might be outside of school hours through an organization that isn't affiliated with your local school district, but provides these types of services to help students think about what's out there, what employment opportunities are in our local community. What does it mean to go to work every day? How do we think about that? What does it look like to talk about those kind of things, to experience them through job shadowing and having people come in and talk about employment, and then those self-advocacy skills of how do you think about what you want to do when you grow up? And what are your rights around accommodation and having a disability? And how do we talk about those things to make sure you get what you need? These are different ways that those types of services can be offered. And then as a family member who cares, we're always thinking, how can we fit? How can we be helpful in our loved one going from these pre-employment transition services to actually getting a job, right? To actual life and what that's going to look like. And of course, as our loved one becomes adults, it's their job, it's their life. And as family members, we want to be able to help. So keep track of, right? Ask about what they learned in these pre-employment transition services or early work experiences they've had. What did they like? What do they want to avoid, right? Sometimes with our kids, we learn more about what they didn't like than what they did like. Well, if there's good reason they didn't like that, those might be things to avoid in workplaces in the future. What do they want to learn more about, right? Keep track of those kind of things. Also, once they do start looking for work, and we're going to talk about some services that are available for that in just a little bit, so that you can help them explain and talk about what they learned during this time and have that information help them move forward. So we'll take a minute to talk about some of the ways that adults with disabilities in Kentucky can get help in finding a job. Some people have access to receive a 1915C waiver. This is a Medicaid waiver. In Kentucky, these are often called Michelle P. or SCL, the Supports for Community Living, or ABI, the Acquired Brain Injury Waiver. Here's a list of some of the day services that are included in those waivers, and you'll see that supported employment is one of the options that can be provided through these Medicaid waivers. If your loved one receives one of these waivers, you can ask your case manager about putting supported employment on that service plan once they want to find a job. You don't have to have a waiver to gain employment services. Typically in Kentucky, people start services with vocational rehabilitation. In Kentucky, our state VR agency is called the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. They offer job search help. We're going to talk more about that still, but then also help in connecting to higher education or assistive technology or driving instruction or a range of services related to going to work. In order to get this type of help through Voc Rehab, we're no longer presumed eligible as in pre-employment transition services. Now you have to apply to vocational rehabilitation. So you can look up Kentucky Office of Vocational Rehabilitation and how to apply. You might be able to scan the QR code on this picture of the flyer on your screen here, which will take you to the page to find your local office. You can apply before finishing high school or after finishing high school. This training is being recorded in the second part of May of 2025. As of May 15th, Kentucky Office of Vocational Rehabilitation is under what is called an order of selection. This means that the state doesn't have enough funds to serve everybody who is eligible. It is written in federal regulation. These things happen in states from time to time. It is temporary. It is possible people might get put on a wait list until those funds are available at the moment, depending upon when you watch this recorded training. This may or may not still be the case. You could, even if it is, you can still apply for service, go through that eligibility process, and then you might be put on a wait list. And there are ways to determine when people come off the wait list as funds allow, depending upon the priority category, which means the significant impact of disability. People with a more significant impact are served first, and the date of eligibility. So if your family member is interested in going to work and getting help, they are encouraged to apply so that they can receive services. If wait lists are in place, they are encouraged to apply to get their name on the wait list so that they could come off that list and be served sooner. Supported employment is one of the services that is provided. It is intended for people with the most significant impact of disability, or those for whom competitive integrated employment has been a challenge to obtain or maintain because of that impact of disability. Supported employment is designed to promote personalized employment opportunities for people with disabilities when they need help and support to discover those personal interests and contributions, to find or negotiate a job that fits the things they like to do and do well, and to become an established and valued employee and then pursue job advancements over time. In Kentucky, these are how these services are typically funded. If you have one of these Medicaid waivers, it can pay for these services if vocational rehabilitation funds are not currently available at the time. But this is the process of what supported employment looks like. The time is spent in this discovery, this getting to know the job seeker well, so that they can then look for a job based upon who this person is and what type of work is going to be best for them. Help them find a job that makes sense, and then help them learn that job, become oriented, provided instruction, adaptations and modifications implemented in ways that make sense for that person to be stable on the job. And then there's this idea of extended services or long-term services where somebody's checking in over time to make sure that they stay employed in a job that they like, that they take on additional tasks and responsibilities or move up in that job or even find a different job over time. There's a lot to receiving publicly funded services, and there's even a lot of different roles in supported employment. So it can be helpful to understand the basics because there's a lot to navigate. Again, ask questions. So when somebody applies for services within the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, they will be assigned a vocational rehabilitation counselor. This person oversees that case when it's open with vocational rehabilitation or VR. When it comes to supported employment, VR uses CRPs, community rehabilitation programs, to provide that direct service. Again, the counselor might also connect them to other types of services with vocation within the agency. If someone has supported employment and they are connected to one of these community rehabilitation programs, then they'll be assigned an employment specialist. This is somebody that works for that agency and provides the direct service of supported employment, getting to know them and finding a job. That agency helps them find the job and then is responsible for those extended or long-term services as well. Those might get paid in different ways depending upon what the agency has access to or what the consumer, the supported employee, has access to. And then there might be other professionals who are involved in this or give input into this as well. A rehabilitation technologist, if somebody needs assistive technology, adaptive technology to be employed. Perhaps a physical therapist, occupational therapist, behavior support specialist, any of those kinds of professionals who can provide additional and helpful information or support in figuring out what good work could look like and how someone can be successful in the workplace. As the family member, as the person who cares about the person going through this process, don't be afraid to ask and make sure you understand what the different roles are and who's providing which part of the service. It's okay to say, wait a minute, tell me again who you are and what you do and who this person is and what they do so I understand what to expect from everybody. It's okay to ask those questions because there's a lot. So, what should that employment specialist do who works for this agency that provides supported employment? They should spend time getting to know that job seeker and learning what they like to do, what they're good at, and what kinds of help and support they will need to be successful in a job. They can help that person learn about different jobs or talk to an employers with or on behalf of that person to figure out not just what kind of work you want to do would be good at, but what kind of business would be best for you, right? Big, small, busy, quiet, what type of supervisory style, all those kinds of things. And then once you get the job, they should help make sure that you're able to learn in a way that makes sense to you and that you are able to keep that job over time and move on in your career as you want. It is their job to help you go through this process. It's not their job to do everything for the job seeker, but to be a partner in this so that they are there to offer support if and as needed over time. And it might look different. It will look different from person to person based upon their interest and their needs. The job seeker, likely in supported employment, is an adult, particularly if they are their own guardian. A family member would have to be invited into this process. They'd have to give permission for the employment specialist to talk to other people. If you have that permission, it's okay to make sure that these things are happening in ways that make sense and to ask questions and to help your loved one be a part of this employment plan so that things go well for them. So let's talk about what supported employment should look like. This first phase of service we call discovery. It's a holistic approach. It's not just a checklist of what do you want to do. It's not a standardized vocational evaluation where you go through a battery of tests. You should expect them to talk to the job seeker, to spend time together, observing, participating in different activities, and learning about what the person likes, what's important to them, how they think and process information when they're at their best, and what it's going to take for them to be successful. And you should be able to offer your input. Hey, I'd be happy to talk with you about what works for my son or daughter, for my brother or sister, what they'd be good at, what might be helpful for you on the job. You may know what time of day someone is at their strongest, or how they process information, or what reading skills and challenges there are. These kind of things can help the employment specialist think about work and schedules and tasks, or if they know how someone takes in information and processes sequencing of tasks, what apps would be helpful for them to understand their work responsibilities and stay on task. You know a lot of that information that you could also help share and make sure the job seeker shares in ways that the person understands, and then can connect them to not just good fitting work, but what types of adaptations and modifications and supports will help them to be successful in a job that makes sense for them. And then what we've learned about the job seekers should go directly into impacting where they go look for work and what kinds of work they are looking for. How can you add to this knowledge? Again, and thinking about strengths and interests and conditions for success, what type of work someone will be good at. Do you know of a business that has need of those tasks? Do you know people who could help make that introduction? It's all about networking and finding a job. Who do you know? Are you willing to share knowledge and contacts, just as we so often do in our society for our children, for our family members, and for our friends when they're helping to make connections and find a job? So, a couple of quick examples. One is Lucy. She was a young woman who was finishing high school and wanting to go to work afterwards. And so the employment specialist spent time getting to know her, what she enjoys, what she's good at, what she has experience in, and what kind of business is going to make sense. And things she learned was that she really likes to be around children, that she likes to help people. She has experience in helping people and volunteering and supporting others, and that she really enjoyed that and took pride and pleasure in those types of tasks. And that's what she wanted to do. Um, and in thinking about being around children, she really preferred being around younger children because they need more help. And so she would be able to provide that hands on help in a way she likes to be able to do. Understanding the impact of one's disability is important, not just the name of the diagnosis, but what it means to this person. And so, because of the impact of disability, one might make some assumptions, but in learning about Lucy, she likes to be around a lot of action and noise. She doesn't like to be quiet. She doesn't like a whole lot of downtime. She likes to be busy. And she does have a lot of patience, especially when it comes to helping others and being useful in that way. And so, in understanding what she wants to do, how she likes to spend time, who she likes to be around, the employment specialist thought about work that includes those kinds of things, and and then over time narrow the search to childcare centers And so explored different childcare centers in her local community and what they were like and how they went about things, and identified one that fit in a lot of ways what they thought could work well for Lucy. The requirements, the location, transportation, all those kind of things went into play. And then that employment specialist helped her learn about that business and apply for it, helped represent her and make connections and introductions, and was able to provide staff with information with permission from Lucy about how she learns and what would be helpful in teaching her the responsibilities of the job and making sure she knew what was expected over time. And so giving them ideas like it might take her a little bit longer to understand the expectations or the lesson plan. And so breaking it down in these steps would be helpful, or slowing down a little bit to make sure she understands and has her repeat back to you, which tied into the culture of that particular center. And then when there were extra things that she was struggling with, the employment specialist could meet with her off the job site as well and talk through those scenarios and different ways to respond. And again, reinforcing the expectations and practices of the center and what needed to be done. So she had support she needed on the job through coworkers and then off the job site as well over time from her employment specialist. Jake is another example of a successful supported employment position. Um, it took the employment specialist a while to know him, to get to know him, and until she discovered that he had a real interest in cars, it was hard. It was hard to converse with him. And then he opened up and shared a lot more, and she got to know him in different ways. And it was actually a family member that helped her to understand this interest of his and how to best communicate with him and get to know Jake. You have that kind of insight and information, which can be really helpful to this employment specialist to know and understand and tap into. And so again, getting to know him over a while and what would be best. He does like being around cars and did not at the time have the skill set to likely be hired as a mechanic and to be working on cars. So she started to look at other types of businesses where cars were involved. And one such business is a car dealership, right? Also knowing that not just is there obviously a focus on cars, but they'd have a wider variety of tasks that could be needed to be done at this business, a wider variety of people with skill sets and personalities. And so he could start with tasks that made sense. And as he learned them more quickly, more could be added over time. And that was what happened. And so he was able to get a job at a local car dealership, and he started by emptying the trash. And rather than written instruction and steps for his job, the employment specialist turned those into picture cues that would make sense for him that he could follow and check off as he did them. And as it took him less time to go around and empty the trash, they added on additional tasks, watering plants, and so on over time, to where after a while he was wiping snow off of cars in the winter and turning the key to start them from time to time to make sure that they run, right, as cars sit for a while, and just really added on tasks as he became a really integral part of that dealership and member of their team. So they think about getting to know people and connecting that to what makes sense for work for that person, also helping them prepare for that job, for that interview, right? The employment specialist can help prepare for these things, but so could you, right? What do we do with our children when they're starting to look for work? We have those conversations. All right, let's practice. These are some things they might ask. How might you answer it? And giving them some of that information, right? We do this with young people often. So we want to make sure we do with our kids with who experience disability as well, right? Role playing, processing these questions and answers, working on handshakes and eye contact and nerves, just normalizing how challenging interviews can be. It's true for everybody. Going on a job interview is nerve wracking. And so helping this person that we love to get through that process. And then they should be able to help connect them with the types of supports they need, both through people who can answer questions and then through things that might be helpful either to adapt a bit in the workplace, like altering the lighting or dimming lights in their office, or bringing in an agreed upon method for communication. If written communication works for somebody better than verbal communication, then they can ask for orientation and all that initial information to be provided in writing. So it's not just an onslaught of verbal information that is overwhelming and the new employee doesn't take it in and doesn't learn, right? So we can help come to these arrangements for people to be successful. So again, share insight as to what would be helpful for somebody, right? Oh yeah, noise canceling headphones have been a really good way for them to be able to focus and stay on task with things. Well, that can be brought into the work site as well. Do you know other people that could share additional information? Is there an OT that might know little tricks for someone to be more independent, to get a task done, to manipulate things, to use the restroom independently, or what other people in your life could help offer this kind of information as well? The employment specialist, it's not their job to be one-on-one with this employee forever. It's not, but they shouldn't just drop away completely. They will be there more intensively at the beginning, and that should fade over time as the person, your loved one, becomes more independent, more able to do the tasks and know happens on their own. They don't need somebody with them all the time. So they should come in and check in, make sure things work. Are there additional adaptations? Is the person you always went to for questions still okay answering those questions? If they've left, how do we find a new person that could do that? That you have that point person or that mentor that you can go to for information. Sometimes what's a great job at first, it isn't over time. And so do we need to add on tasks or change tasks? Have the work needs of this business shifted? And so what you do needs to shift, and we need to add some additional instruction for that person to understand it. Do they want to add hours, add responsibilities, or just find a different job? Like, this was a great first job. I've gained a lot of confidence and insight, and I know I want to work. And now I know that I can work and I want to make more money. Or I know that I can work, but I want to do this instead because this is the part that I really like. So I want a job where I can do more of that. That employment specialist can help them find another job over time as well. Because it's a service system, there are some different ways that finding a new job might be paid for, but they can talk with you if you're involved in this about what that looks like. And if you need to go reapply for voc rehab services or have it added more hours onto a waiver or whatever that could look like. And it's okay to want something different. Speak up. Encourage your loved one to speak up and say, I want a different job. I have talked to parents before who are really so grateful that their adult son or daughter has a job, because a lot of other people they know of similar age are unemployed, that they didn't realize it was okay to say, I'm glad he has a job, but he could use a better job, a different job. It's okay to want more and to ask for it. Our job as those who love people, who care for our family members, is to have those high expectations, to have those hopes and dreams for people, and to help them live out the hopes and dreams they have for themselves. Again, the question isn't whether a person can work, but where. There are others to help through this process. And hopefully it can be a partnership to help people achieve their goals and become successfully employed. This was a brief overview about employment. This is my contact information, kwolf@uky.edu. You are welcome to email me if you have questions, if you want to find those resources that were referenced in here. I can help share that information. I think the training platform this is on has a wide range of information and resources as well, and there's lots out there to help you support your loved one in this process so that they can achieve their own goals and live a good life. Thank you for being interested in and invested in Employment First in Kentucky.